Hello and welcome. I would like to introduce you all to Isabel Hunt. She is an amazing woman and she has some pure gems of inspiration to share with us. She's a transformational coach, international speaker, an author, an empath warrior. I love that one. And a world visionary. And welcome. I'm so pleased to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited. I mean, the first time we talked, we totally connected. So I'm super excited about this interview.
Me too. So let's just dive in. So as you know, we're talking about wholehearted living, and I would love for you to share with us, particularly with your empath warrior background, and you might need to give our viewers a little bit of background too there, what you think it takes to live a wholehearted life and how people can do it.
Okay. Yes, that is a big question. Let's see if we can get it into small pieces. For one, I think to give a little bit of my background, I was born and raised in Germany, and I moved to the US about 8 years ago, actually exactly 8 years ago today. And the only reason why I moved to the US was because I had a dream when I was 12 years old that I would be moving here to start some kind of work, some kind of movement, and I just saw myself speaking in front of a couple of thousand people on stage. At that point, I didn't quite know what it was because I grew up being very, very shy. I don't think my classmates actually remember who I was. Who I was. If they would see me now at a reunion, they'd be like, "Who are you?" I'm like, all right. So, but that changed when I turned 18. Like literally, I turned 18 and everything changed and I became more of that extrovert. But all my life, I was very intuitive and I didn't know I was. I had out of body experiences. I felt other people's experience. I think that's one reason why I withdrew. When people were in a bad mood or were angry, I just withdrew or I laughed just to protect myself. Now I know that. Back then it was kind of embarrassing. But over the course, I realized that every time I actually listened to my gut feeling, I was right. And yet my conscious mind always told me a different answer. And my conscious mind is so trained to what society is expecting from you, how parents raise you, what you think is right, what you think you're supposed to do. And so I got into a lot of different directions. From when I was 18, I did leave my home country and I came to the US for an exchange year, which was great. But then I had to go back to Germany and I started to rebel. I thought, okay, God, if you want me to be in the US, somehow there needs to be a way. It's too hard to get there in a normal way. And I thought if I study economics, that would be great. That would give me a chance to get a job. Was totally out of my environment. I did not do well. I got really bad depressions for about 2 years until they kicked me out of university. And it just went up and down, up and down. It was just never an ending there. And I started over with social science, which went great. But then I got into bad relationships with an American, and that didn't, like, where I thought, okay, maybe he's the guy where I get there. And so I always had this dream in my mind and was working towards that, and that of just letting go. And it was a struggle. Then I came back to the US a couple years later, and I was supposed to start my master's degree. I didn't have $60,000. I got almost deported. I had to go to Canada, like all those things. Every time I didn't trust myself, every time I wasn't in the flow, obstacles just showed up over and over and over. And then at some point I met a guy who is now my husband, but back then it wasn't quite clear because he didn't want to get married. And he was like, no, I'm not going to get into that. Too difficult with the whole visa thing. I love you, but no. And so I was like, okay, I'm trying to make things work. I'm trying to make things happen. It's so much work, always being depressed and panic attacks and just this hopelessness. At that point, I was 27 and I was like, okay, I'm 27. I never had a real job. I don't even know where home is. I don't even know who I am and what I'm supposed to do in life. I thought I would be married and have kids by now. And nothing worked. And then I just literally, there was like an aha moment. There was nothing for me to do anymore. And I just let go. I was like, okay, I just need to let go. Whatever happens, happens. If I have to go back to Germany, I have to go back. I figure something out. And once I literally let everything go, that's when everything came together. And that was the tipping point for me. That's also when then my then boyfriend asked me to marry him, because he was worried that I would just leave. We're still happily married. He is really my rock. It's perfect marriage, literally. He's great. He understands what an empath goes through because he's one. But then I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I met a friend through a friend who said, hey, maybe coaching is what you need to do. So I went through coaching training, and it was exactly what I needed. From that day on, I understood what's going on inside of me, what stories I have created. I was able to deal with my shadows, and that's when it came up, okay, I am an empath. That's when I heard that word for the first time, and I understood. I get overwhelmed easily if I don't take care of myself. We take on other people's pain. And like literally, world events have an impact on us no matter where it's at. It doesn't matter. Like for me, the world moves like the weather, like where you can see the weather coming together and you see the clouds moving. That's exactly how it feels to me when the world and world events happen for me. And so I can feel that. But most empaths also have gifts. Like for me, it's seeing colors around people and identifying what's going on with them. That is something that's huge for me. And being really intuitive. I do a lot of intuitive work over distance, which is not a problem for me. Some people are like, how do you connect with them? It's like, I don't know, it just connects, it just clicks. And a lot of empaths are capable of that. But then I realized that I responded to a lot of people that would consider themselves introverts. But they didn't just want to sit on the couch or hide behind the couch. They want to do more. And so I thought, okay, they are warriors at heart. They really want to get something out there, but they get so overwhelmed being an empath that they don't know how, and the both of it doesn't fit together. And so I looked at my life and I realized I am actually an introvert, but I'm also an extrovert. I learned over all that personal development through myself and what I learned about myself, how to combine the two. And that's how I came up with my work. I'm like, okay, there are people that I would consider empath warriors. So literally, wholehearted living for me is understanding what's really going on as a whole inside of me, dealing with the light and the darkness, like the shadow side of you, and really grasping that everything that is happening inside of me is just simply part of me. And it starts with the emotions. Wholehearted living for me is being able to identify and express my emotions properly, knowing even what to do with it, and allowing my soul and my body to guide me through life, to be in the flow and not just try to make things happen every single day. Some people would call it hustle every day. I don't like that, especially it's being used with entrepreneurs a lot. You need to hustle every day to be successful. I really believe success equals understanding of your calling and your purpose, which are two things. Actually, most people put them together. But and then really just being in the flow, listening intuitively, and not following the fast pace that our society sets up for us. I think that for me is really wholehearted living and understanding how to live a fulfilled life.
Yeah, so it sounds like really, so it's slowing down from that fast pace, tuning in to what it is, what you're calling, and what your purpose is. So could you help our viewers dive in a little deeper there? How can they get in tune with their intuition and figure out the difference between calling and purpose?
Okay, let's start with the calling and purpose. I have learned, when I started out as an entrepreneur, I literally bought into a whole bunch of different programs. I probably spent over $50,000 just to figure out what my purpose is, what I'm supposed to do with my business, and how it's supposed to look like, and nothing worked. So if you're an empath and you get frustrated over that, this is totally normal. Just cut all the shit. I'm sorry. Cut it all out and don't even worry about it. Really just listen to tune in with yourself before you sign up for anything, because your body and your mind, especially your heart, will teach you, will tell you which is actually appropriate right now, which is something that you really need, and which is totally just you buying into the panic attacks of being an entrepreneur. Just something to understand. So calling is something that you do in life. It can change over time. It can evolve. It can develop. Different things may show up. At some point, like I always call calling the phases in life. At some point, there's a phase in life where maybe your calling is just being mom. Another time, your calling is to really be and have your own business, or be part of a company of their bigger mission, whatever that is, but it can evolve. Your purpose, however, is who you are in this world, which barely ever changes unless you totally change and you take off all the masks to realize something deeper inside of you. That's a different situation, but your purpose is more of your essence. For me, for example, as a coach, we have a couple different exercises to go through that, but that would take too long. But for me, for example, my purpose is celebration. Now that seems to be like a doing word, but it really is more about who I am in the world and celebrating other people, celebrating myself. That's usually a problem. I don't celebrate myself. I know I need to work on that. But for other people, it might be love or compassion or just being or peace, things like that. And when you have this figured out, it's actually quite simple to determine. So if anyone is interested, just send me an email. I can do it with you for free. But if you figure that out, you can use this whole thing as your marketing message. So that is the difference between calling and purpose. And I think a lot of people get confused where they see my purpose is my calling, so I have to find something that I'm pretty much going to do for the rest of my life. And that's not true. And I think defining it this way, it takes away the stress about figuring out my calling. It's just being in the moment. This moment is my calling, and my purpose is the umbrella over all of this. And it's just a way of living. Okay. And then when it comes to emotions or intuition, how to live intuitively, it really, I personally, in my opinion, I believe intuition equals emotions. Because what we know is emotions is the Latin word for emotus or emovere. I have my small Latin certificate, which is quite handy sometimes. But it means flowing outward and moving outward, which means keeping everything in flow, keeping everything moving. And we have created such a distorted understanding of emotions that we mostly fight what we feel. We have created such a fear about fear that is such a vicious cycle. It doesn't even make sense. We fear fear, and what you focus on, you create more of, right? While, for example, fear is literally just your intuition. We get confused with panic or terror, which stops you altogether. There are different categories, but we just put everything under fear, and then we think, oh, we are totally afraid, we're fear. So fear. Doesn't work, right? So the intuition really is to learn what you feel. There's some different scientists that say there are 38 different emotions, there are 48, others say there are a couple hundred. I don't know them all, to be honest, because it's a huge thing. But in the basics, they're about, I would say I work with about 10, between 10 and 20, it depends. I have a whole list here with some exercises. So, but once we understand what we feel and we can identify that, we can then give it a meaning, and that meaning is part of our intuition. So for example, a good exercise is that I give pretty much all of my clients when they really want to start tapping into their intuition for a whole week. Best would be 2 weeks, but that's usually a week is good for most people. Have a journal with you, and every time your mood changes or what you feel changes, write that down. If you don't know the word for it, describe it. What do you feel? What was the trigger? What happened? What was the specific event? And then continue throughout the day. So you start to realize what you feel in each moment. What are your triggers? What are stories that you may have created? And you see the pattern. And once you understand that, you can start finding the description for each of what you just felt. Maybe it might be sadness. Maybe a specific event created a memory from the past that created sadness or grief that you may have not dealt with in the past. So it comes back every time. Anger is really just about your boundaries. Where are you not acknowledging your own boundaries or someone else's boundaries? Where are you not taking care of yourself? Is your heart, your subconscious mind, stretching further than your conscious mind? Are they no longer in alignment? That creates anger and frustration. As I said, panic and terror, if you feel that, like panic attacks, a lot of empaths suffer from depression and panic attacks. That is your body telling you, literally, shutdown mode. We're done. If you're not doing something now, it's going to end up not good for you. It's not going to be good. And so your whole system just shuts down, and it gives you a stop to think and to be forced in the moment, because before that you may have thought about the future or certain people or even your past, and that creates the panic, and your body's just saying, yep, stop. And when we know that, it's no longer scary. It doesn't define us as it was before, right? Sadness or grief. A lot of people think they experience grief when it's actually just sadness. Sadness also helps us to just lay back a little bit and just to be in the moment. It's your body signaling for you, hey, you're moving too fast. You're missing out on things. Your subconscious mind recognizes that. When you're missing out, you feel that sadness, right? When you feel like, oh, this moment is over, or my vacation is already over, we feel this kind of sadness about it. And that's the same. Your subconscious mind realizes how fast you're moving and how many things you're missing that would be actually beneficial to your life in the direction that you're supposed to go. So the feeling of sadness shows up. Grief is really when something needs to be left behind. It might be a program that you created as an entrepreneur. It might be some friends that you know no longer serve you in the way that it moves you forward as a whole. All those things, everything has such a deep meaning. And by now, for example, I always use the example of my dog. She's driving me nuts, by the way. She's only 8 years old, but she triggers me constantly. And it's not a coincidence that she's female. I mean, I have a little boy and a husband, so there's not much female energy around. Now she came, and suddenly there was all the female energy. And we know female energy is more about nurturing, caring. And in my work, I have to be more powerful masculine. Now you can be powerful as feminine, as a female too, obviously, but it's just a different power within, right? And I was always going. I needed to keep up with everyone. And she just triggered me. And at some point, I was so angry at her that I just wanted to leave her outside. I didn't do anything to her, don't worry. But I just didn't want to do anything with her. I was like, you're making me so angry. And I had to sit down and I had to reflect, like, okay, anger has a meaning. What is she triggering? And again, I didn't set the boundaries for my own well-being. I didn't nurture myself the way I should. And no, that really helps me. And she kept reminding me of that over and over. And so even she knew, she caught up on that energy. So every time someone makes us angry, pay attention. Where are they may not respect your boundaries? What are they trying to tell you? What is it trying to tell you, that experience, you know? And that really helps us to be so in tune. I mean, now I know if I look at something and work through something, and I was like, oh, this program sounds great. I want to sign up for it. I think that's going to help me to get more clients, blah, blah, blah. We all know that 6 figures in 3 months programs. But when I look at it, what I really just tune in, like, okay, what does it bring up inside of me? what is the emotion? Is it maybe anger? Is it excitement? Is it happiness? And so I really listen. And if it feels in alignment with who I am and my goal overall, and I'm really honest with myself, do I choose that because I feel like I'm missing out on things? Do I choose it because I'm starting to run after money instead of my calling or my purpose in that sense? And really be honest, I can choose, okay, if I'm supposed to sign up for this, I know I'm being taken care of. There's this flow of receiving and giving. And some people call it universe, I call it God, doesn't matter, but there's still a giving. And if you give into that, expect that you're being taken care of, but you need to listen. Why are you doing certain things? How are you doing certain things? How do you usually make decisions? When I do that, there's always enough money there no matter what I'm going to sign up for. But if I know I just do it out of scarcity, the money's never there. And then I wonder, like, oh no, it's not working, and why not? And all those things. And that is something that I really work with clients on. If you can identify the emotions. And one thing that I want to mention real quick, what can get in the way is trapped emotions. Our body is an energy machine, let's call it that way, an energy machine. So everything is energy. Every emotion is on a specific frequency. That's why different chakras respond to different emotions. Different emotions respond to different frequencies from flowers. I am doing Bach flower therapy, which helps release some emotions as well as accelerating some emotions that we need to move forward. So everything is just on a specific frequency, it just works together. I mean, for example, anger is being stored in your liver. The energy or the frequency of the liver relates to the frequency of anger. And so everything can be stored in the liver. Someone has a lot of liver problems, it's usually about anger problems. And most often we don't know. Now I forgot his name. Every time I talk about him, I forget his name. Dr. Bradley Nelson, he does emotions code, and that's what I work with. I use his program to release trapped emotions. He says that we have about 300 trapped emotions, depending on how old we are. But with most of my clients, most of the trapped emotions, they build up in their body and they create physical pain. And they go to the doctor, I'm like, I'm sick and I have this and that. When if we look at the whole body for example, with the Killian photography, you can see the different colors in the different areas and how strong they are, and if there's actually some energy that's in the way of that free flow. And with most of my clients where I do the work with releasing the trapped emotions, it had happened between birth and 20 years old, most of the time. And so we can identify the emotion that's trapped and we can identify the situation that caused it. And so once we release that, it's almost like you feel like a new person. It's incredible. I've done it with myself. I had other people do it on me, as well as me, obviously, with my clients, but it's just incredible. So in a world where we're emotionally so underdeveloped, where we have created a system where we fear emotions no matter what it is, where we chase after happiness and don't understand that we can only find that in the here and now, but most people don't know how to do that. Emotions feels like a trap sometimes in that environment. We don't want to deal with it. We don't want to deal with the emotion, but we have to really be able to trust our intuition and then make the right decision. Once we get to that point, we can make decisions faster. We get where we want to go faster, and we don't have to wait until we're 60, 70 before we understand, oh, this is what I was supposed to do in life. We can do it before 30 or 40 or, like there's no limit to it. You can make that decision because it's just all of your journey. So that is really, for me, tuning in and understanding what is going on inside of you to live more powerfully on the outside. Now I talked a long time.
I know, it's wonderful. So just because you've brought up trapped emotions, I don't want to leave our viewers feeling worried. Oh my gosh, I might have trapped emotions. I mean, we all do. So how can people start releasing those trapped emotions? So they're keeping a journal. They are starting to identify what their triggers are. Oh, and I have to quickly tell you a funny story when you said about the triggers. A friend of mine asked me once, can I pray for you? And what would you like me to pray? And I said, oh, please pray for me to have more patience. She said, oh, no, because that will mean you're going to get challenged to deal with your lack of patience. I was like, oh, no. I was like, okay, so because having children or dogs, they trigger these things that you need to work on. And mine was patience. It was a big one. I have since, with meditation and a few other practices, learned how to stay more zen, as I call it, and calm. But yeah. The triggers are usually what we have to work on. So for our viewers, how can they start releasing those trapped emotions?
Since everything is energy, if you are already very in tune, if you already are in this world of healing, and that's part of what you do, then I think the best is for you to just scan through your body and see where it feels off. If someone is listening and already uses Reiki, it's pretty much, you just literally do Reiki on your body and you feel the energy where it gets stuck. And before you do that, you can even ask your body, where do I have trapped emotions that need to be released? Show me. And your body will show you. So someone who is more advanced is able to do that on themselves, and then you can literally just focus on it and change the flow of energy. Since thoughts are energy, energy and energy works together, so you can release it yourself most of the time. Most people don't have that skill, or it's hard to do on yourself. I have to admit, sometimes it's even hard on myself, because then I feel like I'm starting to judge a lot, or this shouldn't show up. You have opinions, like everything you've learned in the back of your mind, so it's hard to really just let go. So I personally do it over Google Hangouts or Skype conversations, where I combine the emotions code practice with Reiki, and I tune in with their body. I also use like magnets. Those are really strong magnets that change the course of your energy. And where through questions and working with your subconscious mind, I mean, there are questions like, here, this is always my notes for my sessions, is this trapped emotion column A? I have, again, that's a whole program about it, so it's not just something I made up, but people don't know the answer. So there's no way for them to really understand, okay, I don't know. So they have to trust their subconscious mind, and we figure out the emotion and then exactly where it's at. Most of the time, it's really like, oh yeah, I always had lower back problems. And then once we release the emotions, they haven't had it in a long time. One client said to me she could suddenly breathe after we did it for the first time in years. And another one just saw how relationships unfolded because of releasing those trapped emotions. It just feels so pure. And so one of them, she's like, I have no idea how you do that or what you do, but it definitely works. I was so skeptical, but it really does work. So I think someone who's not so advanced in their understanding of healing and energy work, it would be best to reach out to someone who knows how to do that. With most Reiki, I think you can release trapped emotions as well. I personally just combine the two because it works well for my work.
Yeah, and it's I mean, there's a lot of research to back up that our emotions have such a huge effect on us. And there's people who are out there saying, Dr. David Hamilton actually, it's great. I've been to one of his talks, and he shows the science on slides. It's lovely. I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to science and slides. And he shows what actually happens to your body when you're authentically kind. And it's the serotonin release and how it improves your cardiovascular health. So there is science being out there to back it up. And also the work with the water with Dr. Emoto. Our thoughts are energy. So it's having positive or negative thoughts really influences our environment. And so we can have maybe we can't immediately change our environment, but we have a choice on what our thoughts can be.
Yes.
but it's about being authentic with them rather than pretending to be nice or pretending to be kind. It's really being authentic, and that's why I think your point of writing in a journal, so we can see what our triggers are and see where our thought and emotion energies are going. So sadly, we're going to be running out of time soon. So I would love for you to just, if there's anything you want to leave our viewers with, and so we can just kind of go with that for a little bit.
Well, for one, I think what really helps, and that kind of summarizes it all, that can really help people. For one, the exercise with paying attention to your emotions, just journaling it. But when something does show up, if something makes you angry or frustrated, or you feel sad, or, I don't know, even fear, right? The best way is to recognize it, but not to judge it, just to acknowledge it, what you feel. Like, for example, if you're really angry, take a couple minutes and sit down and just acknowledge, okay, I am angry. And then ask yourself the questions, what is it that I need? And you start to normalize it, and anger no longer becomes this bad thing in our life that we need to avoid every single day, otherwise we're not accepted. It's just the way we deal with it. A lot of people who are angry, they just let it out on other people, and that doesn't help. So recognizing and acknowledging it, and then just kind of paying attention to where it shows up in your body. Most of the time when you feel anger, it sits on your chest, like, or your shoulders get really tight. And most people know that, like, oh yeah, I have a headache, I'm angry. Yeah, or you just hunch over, or you just have your fists up the whole time. So you realize that, and then just show this part of your body some love. Just say, okay, thank you for showing me what I need in this moment, or that I do need something. I'm ready to let it go because it served its purpose, and you can let it go. It's, again, words and thoughts have energy. So you're helping to create that free flow. And then you reorient yourself. For one, you acknowledge what you need and how can you get this, what you need. If it's encouragement or acknowledgement or just some time for yourself, like, what is it that you need? And then reorienting yourself by showing yourself love, by acknowledging that need. And then lovingly applying the response that you hear from your body. I think that is, in general, the pattern to go through when you go through something really extreme, even panic. If you feel it coming up, most of the time people feel it coming up, at least I usually did before it actually happened. Now I can just sit down and I'm like, okay, I can do my breathing exercises. What am I feeling? And then when I really listen, I can hear, okay, panic. That means my body is shutting down, system shut down. What do I need? And then I have to be really honest with myself. Maybe that just means a nap, even if I feel like I shouldn't be taking a nap because I need to get all this done, and my son, and blah, blah, blah. But I need to do that. And then I just be kind and loving to myself in the response to that. I think that is the biggest part someone can ever do when they just feel kind of out of control in something where they don't feel they're in that flow anymore. And another thing that I do want to mention real quick, because a lot of people tell me that, oh, I feel stressed. Stress is not an emotion. Stress is not an emotion. Stress is a condition and the relationship between you, who you are, and what you feel, and the outer circumstance. And so the question is more about, are you angry? Are you ashamed of yourself? What does stress mean? Are you confused? Are you panicky? Are you furious? Maybe depressed? Maybe all of it together. So if someone tells you they feel stressed, it's not a feeling, it is a condition. The feeling is a different one, and that needs to be analyzed to get back into the flow. I think that's something important to mention real quick before we get to the end, because most people experience stress in today's world. So that's something to remember.
I'm really glad you brought that in there, because so many people would put stress in with all the other emotions. And so that's a nice little bonus piece of information to leave everybody with. And I think you've given everybody a lot to think about, and thank you so much. And and explain the difference between purpose and calling. yeah, this I could talk to you for hours more, actually. So.
Me too. I mean, there's a reason why I'm a public speaker. I love talking about that topic, and when I'm in the flow, I just keep talking. So yeah, it's good when you have someone who stops you.
Okay, well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to hang out with you for this time. And yeah, bye.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Bye.